everybody, Mike and Hannah here with Delta Faucet. Now, if you're planning a bathroom renovation or even doing new construction, a new shower and wall set can make all the difference, and it's a project that we can help you tackle.
Now keep in mind that building codes are different everywhere. So if there's a task that seems a little bit beyond your abilities, we definitely recommend contacting a professional for some help. You can also make sure that you're totally comfortable with all of these steps by reviewing this video before fully diving in.
It's also good to know that this is really a two-person job. There are certainly some steps along the way that require an extra set of hands. Now, before we get started, we want to make sure you're watching the right video. So let's confirm a few things. First, look at your packaging or your installation guide to confirm what series you've selected. Now, this video will cover the shower base installation in Delta's Classic 500 Curve series.
Finally, if you are pairing a matching wall set with your shower, make sure that the wall set is one of the Classic 500 series options. If all of those things check out, you're watching the right video. If not, you might have a different Classic 500 model. But don't worry, we have videos for that too.
Now, before starting any plumbing-related project, it's always a good idea to shut off the water supply. So be sure to do that before you start the install. Next, let's collect the tools and supplies we may need to complete this installation. These include a drill. You also want to grab some safety glasses, a caulk gun, 6 tubes of adhesive, 2 tubes of sealant, a tape measure, a level, a carpenter's square, some shims, a drop cloth, a pencil, and we're gonna need a driver bit, some mortar if your subfloor is out of level, and a bit holder extension, as well as a 3/16 inch drill bit, 1 1/4 inch stainless or zinc plated truss head screws, a 1/4 inch square notch trowel, a hole saw, and some gloves.
You're also going to need a shower drain assembly. It's not included with this model, so get a standard shower drain with a 4 1/4 inch strainer. And a pro tip here, you may want to make sure that the drain finish coordinates with your trim finish. Check out our separate video for that installation process.
Okay, with all that said, let's get started.
The first step is checking to make sure that the opening is plumb, level, and square. So grab your long level, and we're gonna check to make sure that our studs are plumb. So we're gonna hold our level against the studs, making sure that the bubble is in between the lines. And we're gonna do that at each one of the studs in our opening. Now take your long level, bring it down to the subfloor, and check to make sure that your subfloor is level at the back, the front, and both sides. Now I know that our subfloor is level, but if at home yours is not, you'll need to apply a mortar bed at a later step.
You also want to make sure that your rough framing is square. So to do this, I'm going to be using a carpenter's square. Starting down low on my back corners, I'm going to hold the square tight to the corner, making sure I'm getting good even contact along each side of my square and my bottom plates. And I also think it's a good idea to check just a couple feet up as well on my framing, making sure again, I'm getting good contact on each side of the square. Now I really want to stress how important this step is because it's going to be one of our last opportunities to make any of the necessary adjustments. Now, making sure your opening is level, plumb, and square will really help ensure that the installation moves along smoothly through all of the later steps. And one of the final things I want to note as well is if you're planning on installing a matching wall set, I think it's a great idea to check the installation booklet as well for the wall set to confirm we're meeting all of the rough framing requirements. Once you've done all those things, we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Next, we can move on to dry fitting our shower base into our opening. So the first thing you'll notice is I've taken my shower base and pushed it all the way into my opening tight against the back wall. Also, I've put a piece of cardboard down to help protect the finish as I work inside the base itself. Now, there's a few extra things we want to check with this base fully pushed into our opening. The first is I want to guarantee that it's sitting level. So I've used my level here. I'm going to place along the front edge here, the back edge, and both sides, confirming that everything's looking good. Next, I want to double check my rough framing. So I'm going to go again around my opening, making sure I don't have any excessive gaps between the flange and the framing behind. If you do, that's totally fine. We can close that with a shim at a later step. However, for my application, I do want to point out one thing. You'll notice along the front edge here that I want to have a secure point to secure my shower base to the frame behind, and I'm actually missing a little bit of blocking here. So I've pre-cut a little bit of extra framing here that I'm going to tack to the back of the existing stud, secure it in place, and now I have a good connection point along the front edge of my shower base here. I'm gonna add another block to the other side so I have one on each side. Now, with my shower base in its final resting location, there's a couple reference lines that we're gonna be making. The first line is taking our pencil and running it all along the front edge of my shower base here. I'll be using this line in a later step. The next reference line I want to make is for the drain location. So I'm going to take my pencil, holding it straight up and down, and run it around the circle of the drain in my shower base. And finally, the way we're going to be securing the base to the frame behind is using screws through this top flange on the shower base. So we're going to be drilling some pilot holes. So I'm going to take my pencil, and I'm going to be marking in the middle of my rough framing from left to right, and also in the middle of my flange from top to bottom. So right here on the front edge, and then here, my next location. Now I'm going to continue marking my pilot hole locations all the way around my opening at each one of my stud locations until I've got them marked all the way around the flange. Once that's complete, we can move on to drilling our pilot holes.
Okay, now it's time to drill our pilot holes. So I've gone ahead and taken our shower base out of the opening, and I have a drill here with a 3/16 inch drill bit and an extended bit holder. Now that's to make sure that the spinning chuck of my drill doesn't damage my shower base as I'm drilling my pilot holes. All right, so let's go ahead and drill our pilot holes at each one of the reference marks that we made earlier. All right, once you've got all your pilot holes drilled, we can move on to the next step.
Next, we can move on to cutting the hole for our drain. Now, the important thing here is making sure that we're cutting a hole that's large enough to accommodate whatever drain we've selected for our shower base, but no larger than 5 inches in diameter. So, once you're ready, we're gonna come to that location that we marked previously, center our hole saw over the top of it, and then go ahead and cut our drain. Okay, we've got that hole drilled, so we're gonna clean up this little area, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Now, the important thing to remember here is we wanna make sure that we're not using plumber's putty to create the seal between the drain and the shower base itself, as it can cause damage to the shower base finish. Instead, we wanna make sure we're using an acrylic sealant. Also, for my install, I've installed a Delta branded shower drain into my shower base. And if you're doing the same, be sure to check out the separate video we have to walk you through those installation steps. Now, once my drain's installed, you'll notice I've also brought my rough plumbing, my drain line, up to speed as well. I've got it not only centered in that hole that I cut previously, but again, the pipe has been cut at the correct height as dictated by the drain manufacturer's instructions. Now, the important thing here is we wanna make sure that that drain pipe isn't sticking up above our subfloor by any more than 1 3/4 inches. Once I have my drain installed and my drain pipe installed, we're gonna do one last dry fit of our shower base into our opening to confirm that everything's not only sitting level, but also that my drain pipe and my drain itself are coming together perfectly to create a watertight seal. So, once you're ready, we're gonna drop this back into place, making sure the two are aligned perfectly. However, a little bit of a pro tip here is that if your drain came with one of those grates on top of it, I definitely recommend removing the grate at this point and setting it off to the side for safekeeping, because as you're dry fitting this back into place, it makes it that much easier to confirm that the drain and the drain pipe are coming into perfect alignment. So, once you're ready, let's go ahead and dry fit our shower base for that final time.
Okay, now it's time to adhere our shower base to our subfloor. Now, if your subfloor was out of level, this is when you'll need to apply your mortar bed. You wanna make sure that you use construction adhesive that's safe for plastics, and use a 1/4 inch square notch trowel to spread it out. You also wanna make sure that you don't apply any adhesive beyond this reference mark that we drew earlier. And also you can keep your construction adhesive about 6 inches in from these side walls and from the back wall. All right, so let's go ahead and get our construction adhesive down and spread it out with our trowel. All right, we've got our adhesive spread out, and now it's time to set our base for the final time.
Another important thing to remember is that if our drain requires any cement to be placed on the rough plumbing or on the drain itself to ensure a watertight connection, we've gone ahead and done that now.
One last note, you wanna make sure that you pick up your shower base and lower it into place rather than sliding it. All right, let's get to it.
We've got our shower base in our rough opening for the final time. So now we can move on to securing our shower base to the rough framing of our walls. Now the first thing you'll notice is I've got my cardboard back inside of my shower base, making sure it's covering my drain. That way there's no chance of me dropping any screws down the drain as I do this step. Next, we're also going to be using screws to secure this in place. And I want to talk about the screws just for a second. These screws need to be either stainless steel or zinc. They need to be 1.25 inches long, and they need to be truss head. With the drill, I've got the appropriate driver bit, as well as a driver bit extension here. And what that's gonna do is gonna give me a little bit more leeway as I'm securing these screws in place, making sure that the spinning chuck of the drill doesn't come in contact with the shower base itself. Finally, as I'm securing these screws into place, I wanna make sure I'm not over tightening them because that could cause a little bit of damage to the flange. They just need to be snug enough to hold the base in place. Also, one final note, as I'm working my way around the opening at each of these framing locations, if I see a gap between the flange and the framing behind it of say greater than 1/8 of an inch, I can gently drop a shim down between the framing and the flange to help close that gap, and now go ahead and secure it in place with those screws. Okay, with all that in mind, let's work our way around the opening using those screws to secure our base to our framing at each one of those pilot hole locations that we drilled in a previous step. All right, we finished securing the rest of our screws into place, and we've given plenty of time for any adhesive or mortar we may have used to fully cure according to the manufacturer's instructions.
The final step of this install will actually come after your finished floors are installed. You'll need to apply a bead of sealant along the front edge of the shower base. Now, if you're not moving on to installing the matching wall set, after your finished walls are in, you'll also need to apply a bead of sealant between the finished wall and the shower base. All right, that wraps up this install.
Now, if you are moving on to installing that matching wall set, be sure to check out the separate video we have for that. It'll walk you through the install step by step. And remember, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to the Delta Faucet customer service team. They're more than happy to help.